Now another aspect of the silly sponge I wanted to show you is that it is good for if you want to do a subtle contouring of your face. And I was going to use a darker foundation for this because I had a sample of there we go. So I have this little deluxe sample of Clinique Super Balanced Silk Makeup. And this is in Sable, I believe. Yeah, Silk Sable, number 18. Now, of course, that's not my shade, but it actually is a nice contour shade for me. Now, because, like I said, this is not an all-over face that I'm doing right here with it. This is just for a small area. I'm applying it directly onto the silly sponge. I'm going to take it and dot it into the hollow of my cheek on the other side. I'm going to take a little bit more. I'm going to go around the perimeter, but not applying a lot. And see, I don't put a whole bunch on there. So if you see me, it looks like I'm going back into the bottle a lot. It's because I didn't put a whole bunch on there to begin with. Okay, now I'm going to wipe off the excess. Let me put this cap back on because I am clumsy. I do not want this spilling everywhere. And because I use this sample for light contour, and this thing's going to last me probably for at least a good year. So even if you get a sample and that sample might not be in your shade, I would say try it because you could probably, especially if you get a darker shade, because you can probably use it to help do like a nice natural contour for yourself. And you see what I'm doing here? I'm just taking that foundation and I'm blending it. And I flipped over to the other side so I can further, thin that foundation up and out. See, and that's just, I don't know how well you can see here, but that's just to give a very subtle, more natural looking contour. So if you're a type who likes you still want to do, get your contour on and have, things look a little bit more defined, but you don't want it to be overly done. This silly sponge is actually very good for that. And like I said, I blend it up. And now at that cheek area. And then to the other side to kind of diffuse that color a little more. And then you wipe off. And if you feel like it's still like a little bit too much, then you go back over those areas and you do more of that tap, tap, tap. see. I use very little product and very little product comes off on it. But for something like this, just enough product comes off to help you out. I got this little ring light here. I'm gonna try to up the brightness on a little bit. Excuse me. Okay, now for me, I also do a little nose contouring, and not because I'm trying to completely change the way that my nose looks, but I got a pretty flat nose. And what this does, it gives my nose a little bit of a lift right in this area, so it doesn't look as flat as it actually is. Okay, and I'm like wiping off any excess that I had over on my concealer brush. And I'm using the darkest shade in the Master Camo kit, and this is the deep kit. Okay. And one thing here that I learned is that you take, because especially if you have deeper set eyes, if you're going to contour your nose, you take that color up into here, because you already got a hollow in there that already has a natural shadow into it, and you take it up into your brow, so it don't look like you just stopped here, and it'll be an obvious disconnect for your nose. Now this is only for if you want things to look natural. I know there's some who, they want people to see their contour because they worked hard on it, and they want you to see, where everything went. And that is perfectly okay. But if you don't want it to be as obvious, in person and in pictures, then it's best to follow the natural lines of your face. When you do it in, everybody's face is just a little bit different. So to me, I think there's like no hard and fast rule for everything. It's just that with me, I have these deep set eyes, so I'll naturally have that darkness there. And if I don't take it up in there and I just try to put it right here, it's going to look off and it's going to look obvious. So now you take that Sillisponge and you blend it. And where I put up in here, you blend it into your eye. That's why I haven't put on any type of eyeshadow. Because of what I'm doing here. I'm going to wipe this off. And like I say, I'm not trying to reconstruct or change the entire shape of my nose. I'm just doing this really and I can never say this properly because I have a overbite, but I'm trying to do it for depth. I have to overemphasize that. Because otherwise I probably sound like I'm saying debt. Again, I'm taking it into the eye area. Now and again, when I tell you people, when I do these things, I'm doing them because this is what works for me. This is what best suits my face. If you have a similar face, it probably will work for you too. But I always find that when I watch, makeup tutorials or get ready with me's or whatever. Oh, I'm about to put my eye out because it slipped out of my fingers. I always find that regardless of what skin tone that person has, or face shape or whatever, I can always learn a little something from what they're doing.